This will be my last video before Election Day. My wife and I are literally moving into seclusion to pray seriously from Sunday through Wednesday for our nation. We are at that pivot point that I outlined so clearly in the last video. And there's nothing left to do but vote, and we've already voted, and pray. And if you haven't voted, get out and vote. Get out and vote. I want to do the one more thing that needs to be done. There's really nothing left to say. Nothing left to say about Trump, nothing left to say about the pandemic, nothing left to say about any of the rest of it we know. But I want to just paint a picture that some investigative reporters have done such a good job. I'm going to use their material, but I want to paint a picture of the Biden crime family and how it was functioning, in fact, is functioning. So first of all, we have to go to this. We have to go to BHR Partners and their global network. And in the article, we'll go through these names individually, but BHR Holding Partners and their global network, and listed is Hunter Biden, BHR Director, Partner at Rosemont Seneca Partners, of counsel at Boies Schiller, served as vice chairman on the board of Amtrak, and director on various non-profit organizations. So there we have Hunter Biden, and this is when they had already removed the Hunt's ketchup boy, John Kerry's stepson. But we'll get to these individuals, who they are, during the article. But we need to understand, let's go to this, to understand who and what BHR Partners is. BHR Partners, Bohai Harvest RST Shanghai Equity Investment Fund Management Company Ltd. is a private investment fund founded in 2013 by Bohai Industrial Investment Fund Management Company Ltd. Founded by that. So that's Bohai Partners is founded by Bohai Industrial Investments, which is controlled by what? The Bank of China Limited, right back to the Communist Chinese Party, whose focus is on mergers and acquisitions and investments in and reforms of state-owned enterprises. BHR was established specifically for the purpose of capital injection into Sinopec Marketing Company, in accordance with the laws of the PRC, the People's Republic of China. Its registered address is China Shanghai Pilot Free Trade Zone, the principal place of business and so on in Beijing, right here, Beijing. BHR is one of 25 investors to take part in the capital injection into Sinopec Marketing and so on. Okay, so we know that BHR Partners is a direct tie to the Chinese Communist Party. And then we have to remember that who was the director? Hunter Biden, BHR Director. Amazing. That's their global network. And who are they working for? For the Communist Chinese Party. I want to thank Matthew Timon and L. Todd Wood and CD Media for their work that I'm using here, this anatomizing of the Biden crime family. I mean, literally, that's what it is. It's anatomizing the Biden crime family. On December the 4th, 2013, Joe and Hunter Biden arrived in Beijing, China, aboard Air Force Two. What followed from this trip would have wide-ranging national security implications and affect geopolitics across the West potentially for generations to come. It has been well known for decades that Joe Biden, the credit card senator from Delaware, was for sale. Now the Chinese Communist Party wanted to make him and his son Hunter rented agents of China's political agenda. After deals were inked, the Bidens and their crew were poised to reap hundreds of millions of dollars in exchange for soft lobbying services, i.e., undisclosed and unregistered, and endorsed access to the entire West developed economic market and its most powerful political structures. This was tantamount, and I would leave that out if I were writing it and saying it, but this was tantamount to selling out the American people. It was indeed selling out the American people. And by virtue of aiding China on its economically imperial path to global hegemony, the rest of the developed Western world as well. Total sellout. By indirectly selling his influence through his son to the murderous Chinese Communist Party, Joe Biden was enabling the rise of an actor capable of unleashing horrific outcomes for America and her allies, the world's developed democracies. And as Archbishop Vigano stated so clearly in the letter, the last video, that scheme to clamp everything down with Beijing as the center of globalism we're right at that pivot point with this election. I mean, we're right there. Hunter Biden, the ne'er-do-well son of the vice president, with documented issues making headlines all too often, was the perfect useful idiot for this project. Addicted to drugs, even having been booted from the military for cocaine usage, sexual promiscuity, and connected all over Washington, D.C., thanks to his father's half-century political career, he was an ideal bagman. With recently released emails and text messages from his now famous laptop, it appears Hunter gave his father 50% of his earnings from these activities. By all indication, and thanks to Tony Bobulinski, his first-person testimony to the national audience, Joe was fine with the Chi-Coms using his son so the big guy could bring home the bacon for himself and his clan, siblings, spouses, and the next generations. Meanwhile, Hunter degenerated into a life of debauchery and drug abuse that had the potential to eventually bring down the Democratic candidate for President of the United States. Lord, please make it so. The Bidens walked away from Beijing after this 2013 trip with 30% ownership of a $1.5 billion investment fund. 30% ownership. That's like $500 million, right? Almost $500 million. They took one trip to Beijing, got off the plane, signed some papers, and were richer by $500 million. They offered nothing to the Chinese by way of consideration for their services as lobbyists and door openers. The only thing that got them that money was the fact that Joe Biden was vice president. Now, I'm going to be editorializing through this article, so don't blame everything on the authors. Realize that some of this is what I'm saying. Bohai Harvest, RST, Shanghai Equity Investment Fund Management Company, Ltd., what a name, BHR, was not a legitimate investment company in the classical sense. We got a Captain Obvious award there, right? Set up to make financial returns on investments through legal means, the firm was set up as a tool for the Chinese Communist Party's global economic imperial ambitions, using the Biden name and others in their orbit to market Chinese mercantile domination. The return on investment was not financial, it was political. And Joe Biden was the delivery mechanism to see these ambitions reached. BHR was created and funded by two Chinese investment funds owned by the Bank of China, we just pointed out, Bohai Capital, and Harvest Global. As described in their marketing presentation, BHR is held in high regard by the Chinese government bodies and SOE at all levels. State-owned enterprise at all levels. I'm sure that's what that is, SOE, state-owned enterprises at all levels. During the infamous 2013 visit to Beijing, the Biden's new firm, in which Hunter was a partner, and it had him listed as director, in their own, that graphic that I showed you was from their own literature. The Biden's new firm, in which Hunter was a partner and director, Rosemont Seneca Thornton, RST, signed the deal to walk away with an approximately 30% ownership position in the company after the $1.5 billion capital injection into BHR by their Chinese partners. This was a clear Chinese Communist Party buy-off. There's no way around it. RST was formed from a joint venture between Rosemont Seneca Partners and Thornton, an investment advisory firm headed by James Bulger. What does that name sound like? Bulger? Of the famous Boston family, son of William Billy Bulger, the longest-serving president of the Massachusetts State Senate, and the nephew of James Whitey Bulger, the infamous mobster who ran the Winter Hill Gang, who was on the lam for all those years. And everybody wondered, how in the world could Whitey Bulger have been on the lam for all those years? But because he had friends like this, that's how. Rosemont Seneca was formed in 2009 as a private equity and advisory firm that was co-founded by Hunter Biden and Christopher Heinz of the Heinz ketchup fortune, and stepson to longtime Democrat Senator and later Secretary of State John Kerry, along with their friend Devin Archer. Now, Devin Archer is really important to remember because it appears like he was kind of the ringleader and the coordinator of all of this. And he was Chris Heinz's college mate at Yale University. How much you want to bet their skull and bones? How much you want to bet their skull and bones? The original anchor investor in Rosemont Seneca, which at the time, at one point claimed $2.4 billion in assets under management, was Rosemont Capital, a Heinz family office alternative investment fund named after Rosemont, the Heinz family estate outside of Pittsburgh. During the most vibrant years of this partnership's international investments and consulting activities, it is important to note that Joe Biden was acting vice president and John Kerry was acting Secretary of State. Now, I prefer the words sitting, because acting, an acting attorney general doesn't hold the office. That's temporary. John Kerry was never acting Secretary of State, so they made a mistake here. He was the sitting Secretary of State, fully confirmed. Joe Biden was the elected vice president, not acting vice president. So it was not coincidental that Rosemont Seneca's headquarters was in Washington, D.C., as opposed to New York, where most of its competitors maintained their offices, given the investment professional labor pool in and around Wall Street. Yeah, an investment firm in D.C. as opposed to the financial capital, Manhattan. By late 2013, Chris Hines was beginning to get nervous about the international activity of Rosemont Seneca Partners, and I'm sure he was getting nervous about the wild and outlandish behavior of Hunter Biden and wanting to cover his own rear. And the theaters in which they were engaged in their business activities, such places as Ukraine, where Hines was particularly cautious given brewing instability, and then ties to Putin as well as Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. According to one email between Devon Archer and another outside partner, Jason Galanis, they discussed elevating the Biden name and reducing the presence of their marketing materials of Hines, and by extension, the marketing of their ties to Secretary of State Kerry. And this article that I'm going to link has all of these emails. When it makes a claim, it shows you the emails where this came from. So Chris screenshot Bevan Cooney emails by Matthew Tyerman. They called this pivot Operation Ketchup, moving from Kerry's stepson, Hines, to Hunter Biden, Operation Ketchup. And it was from Hines to Hunters. Hunts only for now on, as Archer said. Chris, that's a quote, this is another quote, Chris is much more risk adverse. This is Archer, Devon Archer talking. Chris is much more risk adverse. Hunter will work if he needs him to as well. 5 days later, the emails between them, Archer and Galanis, gave us this admission. We get the Biden lift and stay out of Hines' panties. I don't want to upset Hunter by not representing him, and I don't want to piss off Hines by using his name unauthorized. Hines wiped from all bios too, correct? He's asking. So Hines wasn't divorced from the company in 2013, where it said. No, he was. He stayed on until 2015. 2 years later, Hines divorced himself in full from Rosemont Seneca activities. Now, according to first-hand account from another business partner, Bevan Cooney, who while in prison in September 2020 flipped. Now, September, that's not so long ago, right? I mean, this is the end of October, less than 3 months ago. September 2020 flipped and shared his emails with investigative reporter Matthew Tyerman, co-author of this article. The infamous BHR deal was inked with Ambassador Max Baucus. Do you remember him? Here's his picture, Max Baucus. Max Baucus, present in his office at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. Max signed off on it. Baucus was the former 6-term Democrat senator of Montana and Obama's appointee to the head diplomatic post in China, and had a long-standing relationship with Biden Sr. and Kerry from years, all serving alongside each other in the Senate. Baucus was also connected to Devon Archer, as Archer was a fellow Montanan. Now, there's also the fact that that Max Baucus was one of the biggest cheerleaders for China most favored nation status, China in the World Trade Organization. He was selling out the U.S. to China, through political means, and there's no telling if you went digging there what you would find. So BHR's initial deal and the impetus behind its formation, at least optically, was a unique project, whereas the firm would co-invest in an equity deal in a wholly owned subsidiary of Sinopec, the $60 billion Chinese state-owned energy and chemical company, and then market shares in the West via Sinopec Marketing, an investment holding company of the giant energy conglomerate focused on the consumer retail segment of its many business lines, gas stations, and convenience stores. The terms were that RST would receive 1.67% ownership in the new spun-out company, making it the seventh largest outside investor in the state-owned Chinese Communist enterprise. The government maintained a 70% stake. BHR was investing $1.7 billion. So that's how they bought in. They set up BHR Partners and bought into the state-owned company at $1.7 billion. And you go back, it's a circle. You go back, the Chinese gave the investment so that they could do that $1.7 billion. And spin it off like it was something other than the Chinese Communist Party. BHR then proceeded to execute a global roadshow marketing the Biden name and connection across Western developed capital markets to aid Sinopec and the Chinese business people connected to the Chinese Communist Party at BHR in acquiring a strategic network, Western capital sources and access, raw materials, and overseas influence. They were operating this massive conglomerate of Chinese Communist Party influence using the Biden name. Of course, given the massive Chinese economy and national reserves from running a cash and trading surplus for 70 years, they didn't really need capital. So this idea of them going out and marketing to get capital, to get people to invest, it wasn't money they were after. It was political influence. It was political control. The Bank of China alone has access to trillions of dollars, and the capital on the balance sheet of the other state-owned enterprises would and could provide untold amounts of other capital to be sourced if need be. In the marketing materials for the deal, the injection of private and social capital, and how they stated it, private and social capital, is cited as a primary reason for raising this cash equity capital. Effectively, this was political capital being sought in this venture. What they communicated through and from the Sinopec marketing presentation was an interest in, quote, bringing about improvements in corporate governance, operational efficiency, and effective management incentives. How is that for doublespeak? It was getting their foot into the door, creating economic control. But the political capital they were building was aimed at Western political power centers in which to lobby for their long-term agenda and access to strategic acquisition opportunities that they might make to further their economically imperialist goals. Thus, strategic foreign relationships that could be built with the help of the Bidens and others from their global network. See the slide below, and that's that graphic that I showed you of their global network. And this image is from Bevan Cooney's emails, actually from their Business BHR Partners business brochure. Who else was important to highlight on their global network marketing slide besides Hunter Biden as a proxy for Lunch Bucket Joe? Of course, Hunter and previously Chris Hines' partner, Devin Archer, who more and more appears to have been the ringleader in the business planning and deal execution, and the mastermind of Operation Ketchup that we talked about already. Throughout the correspondence between the whole gang, Archer bills himself as a senior advisor to John Kerry's 2004 presidential campaign and independent director of Kazakhstan Sovereign Fund. We'll get back to that, Kazakhstan sovereign fund. Jason Sugarman, another affiliate of the group, has had multiple legal problems related to impropriety at the Bank of California, where his brother was the chief executive officer and was involved in the fraudulent tribal bond scheme that has embroiled multiple partners and affiliates of this business circle, Jason and John Galanis, Bevan Cooney, and Devin Archer. James Bulger, right back to the mafia, the aforementioned nephew of Boston gang kingpin Whitey Bulger, who is chairman of Thornton, actively involved in Sino-U.S. trade in the energy and infrastructure sectors. That's a quote. Two sectors where the ability to do business with despots or those who would dole out large-scale crony public contracts was an absolute prerequisite. Paul San was a former portfolio manager at Soros. Oh, they were down to the Soros family. Soros Fund Management. Sir William Jolliffe was the former Lord Mayor of London and a senior advisor to numerous Chinese provincial governments. That's from their brochure. And two Chinese nationals were involved. The first was Yuji Zhao, an investment, now I'm sure I'm butchering these Chinese names, but I'll do my best, Yuji Zhao, an investment manager and expert in state-owned enterprise management and reforms. And in China, state-owned enterprise management is strictly the domain of those highly connected to the Chinese Communist Party, as these are political appointments. The second one is Zhaisheng Hua. Zhaisheng Hua, I think that's right, close anyway, is a former executive of several companies, including H&A Group. H&A is one of the largest diversified Chinese Communist Party connected conglomerates with 700,000 employees and investments all over the world in multiple sectors. H&A is also a dumping ground for Chinese intel assets when the Chinese Communist Party trains them and then has them go forth and conquer in the battlefield of the 21st century global capital markets. It is an impressive group if the goal is global influence peddling and engaging in economic imperialism on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. A great case in point as to this model of economic imperialism and how it works and what its goals are can be seen with the Chinese telco equipment company Huawei. Huawei is the foremost example that is illustrative of these aims, and as such is heavily subsidized by the Chinese state, read the Chinese Communist Party, to innovate quicker and sell cheaper the infrastructure necessary in the 5G network build-out arms race going on right now across the globe, and especially in the Western developed economies. Notice how they said that. 5G network build-out arms race. See, 5G, I've told you before, has the ability to lock down a neighborhood to make it impossible to leave your house. Did you know that? That's only one of many, many weapons that 5G can be used. They can literally put out microwave projection that would make it absolutely impossible to step out of your house, lock down entire neighborhoods anytime they wanted to. I don't think it was an accident that they said sell cheaper the infrastructure necessary in the 5G network build-out arms race. I don't think that it was an accident that they used the term arms race talking about 5G. Going on right now across the globe, and especially in Western developed economies. What is the political goal? That short-term economic upside is sacrificed for, in this case, that's about doling out the money, to build a back door. Here it is that they're undercutting everybody, the state-owned Huawei, undercutting everybody, trying to get their infrastructure in. And the purpose of it is to build a backdoor into Western communications networks from which intel can be gathered. And, other companies, other Chinese companies, that is their goal. An example of BHR team's execution of this model was demonstrated in 2015 with the acquisition of Henniges Automotive by the sanctioned Chinese defense contractor Aviation Industry Corporation, AVIC, Aviation Industry Corporation. Henniges is a dual-use manufacturer, and its sale to AVIC and BHR was facilitated by the Biden family and affiliates. The sale was approved by the Committee of Foreign Investment in the U.S., the CFI-US, which is a political determination made on Capitol Hill. Now, understand that the Committee for Foreign Investment is a multi-department committee. I forget the proper name for the multi-department committee, and I forget the exact name, but you know the one, the Arms Committee, Armed Services Committee. There you go. The State Department and the Senate Armed Services Committee are the two that oversee this Committee of Foreign Investment in the U.S. And it's supposed to be that way so that we don't sell our secrets, so that we don't compromise our defense and all that. And of course, this stuff with China has circumvented all that. And if you go to the Senate Armed Services Committee, who was it during all this time we found out the influential member of the Senate Armed Services Committee? Well, it was nothing other than Trust Sessions. Trust Sessions. Yeah, Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions Aswapi. Yeah, there he was. There he was. And I told you, I made the statement when I was talking about Jeff Sessions when he was running, trying to regain his Senate seat, that he was involved in this stuff with the deal with the Uranium One deal, and people pushed back at me about it, and it required some investigation, and I discovered that this Committee for Foreign Investment in the U.S. Was actually a multi-department entity that was overseen, policed by the State Department and the Senate Armed Services Committee. So yeah, they have to, the State Department and the Senate Armed Services Committee has to sign off before this Committee of Foreign Investment can sign off. So without, when we went back and looked at the votes, yes, little Jeffrey boy did vote for the Uranium One sale. This approval is reminiscent of the famous Uranium One deal, where this Canadian-based company with large uranium mineral interests in American uranium mines in the western U.S. was able to get approval from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to greenlight the change of control of a strategic asset, the material needed for nuclear weaponry, by allowing the sale without forced divestiture to a non-hostile or adversarial actor, an action the State Department could have mandated to the Russian nuclear energy concern Rosatom. Both of these decisions required buy-in and approval by the highest-ranking American political decision-makers regarding our national interests as it related to security and foreign policy. Now, security, the Armed Services Committee, foreign policy, the State Department. The fact that the Committee for Foreign Investment approved the deal is alarming, given that Henniges owns numerous facilities in the United States that are now controlled by the Chinese military front group, according to Breitbart. In addition to the activity, the Rosemont Seneca partners and associates were engaged in with the Chinese and those connected with the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, merely a few facets of which we describe above. They were also deeply involved in other theaters of commerce that were unsavory to say the least. Of course, there is the well-investigated and verified activity of Biden and Archer's board membership on the private Ukrainian oil and gas company Burisma that Peter Schweitzer literally wrote the book on. It was also brought to light by the Bevan-Cooney emails that Biden, Archer, and Galanis et al. Also engaged in a client relationship with a Russian mob-tied oligarch, Alina Baturina, in late 2013 and into 2014, where they were retained by her to help her get banked in the U.S. and obtain bank and brokerage accounts using their affiliated broker-dealer security firm, Berman Securities, a subsidiary of Berman Financial Group, which also controlled Berman Asset Management, where Hunter Biden served on the board as vice chairman. And J.P. Morgan, Berman's prime broker and clearinghouse, which as such needed to approve her as a client as well. This was some serious Russian collusion that we are sure the Mueller special counsel would have been interested in, or perhaps not, since it occurred within the circle of Democrat bigwigs and not having anything to do with the current commander-in-chief, who is the wonderful President Donald Trump. According to the minutes of the August 2014 board meeting of the Burnham Financial Group of Companies, Mr. Archer, a board member, further discussed the possibility of sale of his company and the revenues that might be realized, which he said would be a big liquidity event for him, as well as his connection with Bohai, which he said was sponsored by major banks and institutional investors in China. He also discussed his client relationship with Alina Baturina, wife of the former mayor of Moscow, who he said had invested over $200 million in his various investment funds. Money laundering, money laundering. Can you say money laundering? So now we have Russia, China, and Ukraine as places this team was doing business in 2013 through 2016, while Papa Joe was the vice president and John Kerry was heading the State Department. We can also add to the pile Kazakhstan, another kleptocracy of the post-Soviet stands. Kazakhstan is a superlatively resourced, rich oligarchy run by the iron fist of Nursultan Nazarbayev, a close ally of Putin, and even a role model for Vlad the Revancher. And I have no idea what that slur at Vladimir Putin is, Vlad the Revancher. Given his consistent grip on power since 1989 and until his retirement last year, a highly disputed abdication given his current position still in government as chairman of the Security Council. Kazakhstan, ruled by Nazarbayev, true kleptocratic strongman that he is, was the perfect client in which to sell influence and participate in resource exploitation in the name of competitive Western business practices. In February 2014, Archer bragged about squiring the Kazakhstan foreign minister around Washington, D.C., an activity that would usually require FARA, a Foreign Agent Registration Act, clearance, registering as a foreign agent, the lobbying disclosure. those mandatory disclosures were never filed by anyone in the Biden-Archer-Heinz partnership, nor any of their associates or affiliates. Now that's what they sent Paul Manafort to prison for the exact same thing, for working for some Ukrainian oligarch who was connected to the government and not registering as a foreign agent. If we didn't have a clear and obvious two-tier justice system, if Paul Manafort, they got him for stuff that was 15 years before that the statute of limitations had run out. Every one of these American citizens involved with Hunter Biden, with this influence operation coming out of Red China, with the Communist Chinese Party, every one of them have committed greater crimes than Paul Manafort. Every single one of them, by that standard, should be in jail. Now, they've committed other crimes too, but just by that one standard, the FARA requirements to register as a foreign agent, every single one of these characters should be in prison. During the August 2014 Burnham board meeting, Archer stated at the end of it that he would be meeting with bankers involved with the Kazakhstan Sovereign Wealth Fund to explore possible opportunities for investment. Interestingly, recall that in the BHR Global Network marketing slide above that we showed you starting out, Archer had in his bio that he was an independent director of Kazakhstan's sovereign fund. Archer was certainly looking toward Kazakhstan as another greenfield opportunity in which to practice business the Rosemont Seneca way. To conclude, we have very powerful political families from the Democratic Party and the Obama administration selling its influence across the world for personal gain. In reality, the Bidens were selling the American people out to our adversaries for personal wealth accumulation and at the same time allowing hostile actors to gain at our expense. In the case of China, the Bidens helped them along with their long-term plan to conquer the West through economic imperialism, which has been the current phase undertaken to achieve their hegemony or hegemonic ambitions. China is hell-bent on controlling the world. Its censorship, military aggression in the South China Sea, the One Belt, One Road project, all of that infiltration that I named in a previous video that they don't name here, which uses debt as a weapon to gain infrastructure and raw materials around the world, are all part of this agenda. In the Bidens, Mao's protégés saw the perfect opportunity to weaken and exploit the leading sovereign of the free world, the United States, and use America's political power, a usurpation attempted through economic means for its nefarious ends. Ukrainian, Russian, and Kazakh partners of the Bidens and their crew also engaged this team for their own ends, some motivated by the financial corruption and venality. Others were politically motivated. There will no doubt be more stories coming from these theaters and others. The one consistent thing to glean across all this self-interested activity was that Joe Biden, the big guy, quote, and, quote, my chairman, quote, according to Hunter's own recently uncovered communications, was only too happy to oblige and help in any way that he could, and to line his own pockets, as we have seen through the panoply of recent proofs, no matter the damage to his son, the American people, or the Western world. And, and that he got on every deal 10% to 50% of whatever the deal was. That's what the emails prove. And again, I want to thank CD Media, L. Todd Wood, who is the founder and publisher of CD Media, and this investigative reporter, Matthew Tyerman, It seems like there's been so little actual investigative reporting. This is good to see. Well, that's all. And I'm serious about deep prayer. Deep prayer. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You won't hear from me till Thursday. Thursday. Until then, may the good Lord hold you all close in his hand and surround us all with holy angels to protect us, to guard us, to guide us. And may the will of God be done in this election, no matter the result.